Welcome. I am so glad to have you with me today. Today, we are going to be talking about stress, depression, anxiety, ADD and ADHD, and contraction furrows, and how this all tallies up as we are doing an iris assessment, particularly with the contraction furrows. Some of you have been with me before, and it's always good to have you join me again. Some of you are new to me, so welcome, welcome. So glad to have you. These are interactive webinars. They are not meant for you to sit back sipping your cup of tea. I want you to be asking questions and engaging. I love that Maria knows that. She hops on right away and says, "Good morning, ma'am, Judith, and everyone. I am from the Philippines." I'd love to know where everyone else is from. So take just a moment and give me that in the comments, just, your state or your country, whatever you're comfortable with. And we've got everything streaming and populating, so we are good to go. What I want to start off with, as soon as you tell me where you're from, is what are some of the common symptoms of stress you are seeing in your clients right now? What are some of the common symptoms of stress you are seeing in your clients right now? Okay, I'm going to give you a minute to give me that information. Because I want to know this. It'll help us to apply what I'm going to teach you today. What symptoms do you see of stress in your clients? Oh, we have Body Globe Boutique from Edmonton. Hey, Body Globe, I'm in Calgary. Good to have you. Thanks for being with us. What signs do you see? What symptoms do you see? Nicole is saying stomach pain. Debbie is saying overwhelmed with life, can't think clearly. Ooh, those are really common ones. Any other symptoms that you're seeing? I once spoke with a medical doctor about stress many, many years ago. Had my business, was in university part-time, was pregnant with baby number 5, went to my doctor going, and he said, take a look at what you're doing. Stress does not make anything better. You're a full-time mom. You've got your business, which is full-time, and you're going to school part-time, and you're pregnant. What makes you think you shouldn't be feeling stressed? Right? And he was right. And I had to stop and think, well, I have to get through this university course, and then the baby will be born. So there'll be 2 things. Yeah, having a baby doesn't necessarily make it easier, does it? But it was one thing that would, just things that were cleared off the plate. Maria's saying headaches. Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know some of the symptoms that you're seeing more of in your clients. This is so important. The stress, as we all are aware, has skyrocketed in the past couple of years, right? For things that are beyond our control. And it's made it very difficult for many of our clients to cope. We need to understand that the stress that people are under now doesn't change what we see in their eyes, but what we see in their eyes helps us understand how they will cope with stress and how best to support them. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me a yes in the comments. If it makes sense that the stress that people are under now will not change what we see in their irides, but their irides will help us understand how to best support them when they are under stress. Okay, Maria's saying yes and Debbie's saying yes. Excellent. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I want to take just a moment to introduce myself because we do have some people that are new to us here, and I'm excited that we do have new people. It's always good to have new blood, and I love those of you who've been hanging out with me for a while. My name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner. And for those who are in Canada and know the nutrition organizations, I am affiliated both with CanP and CanPro. I am also affiliated with the Alberta Herbalist Association. I'm a professional member of all of those groups. For the scope of what we're talking about today, I'm also a certified level 3 iridology instructor, certified with IPA. And when you see here, it's got dates on these badges. We have to recertify. We have to do CEUs and prove that we are still worthy of these badges every 2 years. So just important for you to know that I'm not fly by night. I've been in the industry for over 4 decades. I've studied 3 or 4 different styles of iridology. I should stop and count them one day. You'd think after all these years, I would have done that. And I've settled on the one primary one that I love and sort of one auxiliary one that I dabble in. Over the years that I've been a holistic health coach, I have written many books that I've self-published and self-distributed. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2, and the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology textbook, which is the textbook that we use in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course. I've also created and taught many courses. Teaching is a huge passion of mine. I love sharing what I learn, which is why I do these Thursday webinars, and it's why I teach other courses as well. Herbology Level 1 was a 20-hour introduction to how to use commercially prepared herbs. Herbology Level 2 was a more advanced course, 16 hours on how to understand formulations that are commercially available and how what might be printed on the label as far as what it could be used for would be correct. What else could you use it for based on the ingredients? So that was the Level 2. I've designed and taught biokinesiology and color therapy Level 1 and 2. For a little while, I was a certified prenatal educator with the ICEA. Love doing fertility and pregnancy work. And I also, because of that, designed and taught antenatal or prenatal classes. And my biggest course right now that I'm in love with is the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course. This is a course that has been approved by the International Iridology Practitioners Association as equivalent to their Level 1 and Level 2 to prepare people to certify as iridologists. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Here's just a little teaser. The next on-live course of Dynamic Iridology Assessment System starts on August 11th. If you are a health professional, that could be a herbalist, a nutrition coach, a naturopath, a chiropractor, maybe you're a medical doctor or an RN, you could be a midwife even, and you're interested in learning iridology to use with your clients or your patients, stay tuned, because I'm going to offer you an invitation, not to get enrolled in the course, but a different invitation at the end of our time together. All righty, are you ready to start looking at eyes with me? If you're ready to start looking at some eyes with me, give me the word eyes, E-Y-E-S, in the comments, and we will then flip to a new screen and look at some eyes. Nicole says nurse practitioner. Absolutely, we include nurse practitioners in our health professionals. When I define a health professional, I'm looking for someone who actually has an anatomy and physiology course under their belt. Because if they've got that, we can go so deep with iridology. I love that, Nicole. Thank you for that. People who don't have iridology, seriously, honestly, after 4 decades, I know this to be true. People who don't have anatomy and physiology under their belt struggle to learn iridology at a really deep clinical level. And I think we do the best work for our clients when we really know our stuff. And that's why I want my students to all come to me with A and P under their belt already. Okay, so let's look at constitutional iridology now. Yeah. Okay, lots of you said eyes. And so as we look at this, we are going to talk about these lines coming around here. Now, do you have any iridology background? So I need to know, do you have any iridology background? If you've done some iridology and it hasn't been just through me, you've done it in other places, I would love to see background in the comments. Background, if you know a little bit about iridology already. Do you know a little bit about iridology already? Background, some of you do. Excellent. Okay. What have you learned to call these lines, these wrinkles that are coming around here? There are many, many different names for them. Dr. Danielle says she has very little background. I'm so glad you're with me. OJ says that she learned to call these nervous rings. That's one name for them, or Debbie calls them nerve rings. That's another common name for them. Any other names? Have you maybe heard cramp rings or stress rings? In constitutional iridology, Maria, yeah, you've been with me for a while. These are contraction furrows, contraction furrows. And we're going to debunk some myths about these as we go through this. But first, we want to look at the anatomy of the iris to understand how these happen in the eye. So we're going to take an eye, we're going to cut it across here and look at this cut edge. Okay, so keep this in mind that we're going to look at the cut edge of the side of an iris. So that's what we've got right here. This is the cut edge. The pupil would be here. The white of the eye is over here. All right, so when we look at a contraction furrow, it is literally where the surface of the eye has a little dip in it, a little dip, just like this. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment, if you were to take a hand and put it on each side of this screen, so like this. All right. And if you were to squeeze this together, can you imagine, now those of you who are with me on Facebook can't see this because you can't see my camera. So if you put a hand at the pigment rough and a hand at the back where it says least reactive, and if you were to squeeze this tissue together, can you imagine that the tissue that makes up the eye is going to have to form creases? It's going to have to get ripply because it's squished together. And can you imagine that if we stretch that tissue out, those ripples are going to flatten out? Does that make sense? That if we contract or compress the tissue, we are going to have a rippled surface. If we stretch the tissue out, that surface is going to get flatter. If that makes sense, give me a makes sense in the comments box. Make sense? Okay. Yes, excellent, perfect. Because when we look at contraction furrows and we see someone who has an eye like this, now this is frontally lit, which means we don't see contraction furrows because of the lighting. But when we've got a huge, huge pupil, we're going to see, you can see a few little bits of contraction furrows over here. We're going to see deeper contraction furrows if the lighting is correct. Lighting is so important when we're looking at contraction furrows. This is something that I teach in my course. We talk about the importance of having correct lighting and of altering the lighting to see different things in the iris. Now, these next three photos, this one and the next two, are the same eye, the same camera, but I changed the shutter speeds and the light settings to alter a little bit what we would see. So I want you to know that changing tech settings on a camera really changes what we see. So this one, the camera was on a very fast shutter speed to reduce the amount of light. This is what this person's pupils looks like in normal room lighting. Now we're going to look at the next couple of photos are the same person. Okay. She was not on drugs, but she's very high strung. She's very anxious. When we did these photos, she was about 17 or 18 years of age. Due to the dim light and the frontal lighting, that means we've got two lights coming from the front. It kind of hides the contraction furrows. It makes them very difficult to see. So this is the same eye. I know, isn't that mind-blowing that that is the same eye? I'm going to move this a bit closer for my Instagram friends to try to make sure you've got the best picture possible. So this is with brighter light, and you know that the pupil responds to bright light, correct? Bright light makes the pupil smaller. So we've now stretched the tissues out. We went from compressed to stretched. And with this, we can begin to see some hints of contraction furrows. But again, frontal lighting blocks our ability to see them well. Look at what happens when we turn off one of those lights. Can you see now that we have contraction furrows very clearly here in the superior medial side of the iris? Look at all of these down here in the lateral inferior side of the iris. She's got loads of them, loads and loads. So if you're already a practicing iridologist, and if you are, I've got an airplane going overhead and the window's open because it's a hot day here. So if you are already a practicing iridologist and you have an iridology camera and you cannot switch the lighting, you need a different camera. I'm dead serious when I say that, right? Because switching the lighting, you can see how it makes things different. I had one student who was a naturopath. She had learned iridology and naturopathy, and then she came to my course and we talked about lighting, because when we talked about contraction furrows, she said, none of my clients ever have contraction furrows. We're pretty laid back where I live. And I taught her about playing with the lighting. The next email I got was, everyone's got contraction furrows. No one ever said I should play with my lights. So when we see this in an iris, it tells us what her genetic potentials are, particularly when it comes to how she deals with stress. This tells us that she functions mostly in the sympathetic nervous system. Hopefully you all know what that means and what that means for responses in her body. Sympathetic versus parasympathetic. This young lady is a drama queen. A hangnail is a major event. Someone looking at her sideways is a crisis, right? She's actually my youngest daughter and she's now 23. She's settling down quite well. At the time, in spite of being my daughter and in spite of having a really decent nutritional profile that was offered to her, she was on her own consuming a lot of carbs, no supplements, and a lot of junk food. She was skimping on her sleep. I mean, she was doing all kinds of things that we know she knows better than, but she was a teenager. These rings, these contraction furrows, do not tell us she is under stress. They tell us how her body is programmed to burn nerve nutrients and to respond to stress. This tells us how we will best support her. My experience has shown that when we have contraction furrows like this person is at an increased risk for overreacting to normal events in life when they are not well nourished. It also suggests that we should maybe spend some time reinforcing some really excellent stress coping skills with her. We needed to improve her diet. We needed to talk her into being consistent with taking the right kinds of supplements. And we've been teaching her also over the past many years, different techniques for coping with stress. OJ is saying fight or flight mode is the sympathetic system. It is, absolutely. It's what gets you wired up. Let's look at this eye. This eye is a little girl. She was 2 years old when we got this. She did such an amazing job. You know, we didn't get the whole iris, but when it's a young child, I don't fight for that. I just fight for something that's clear that I can see most of. Look at all of those contraction furrows. Look at all of them. Now, again, little 2-year-old girl, and you think, what stress does a 2-year-old girl have? Why would she be programmed to function in a sympathetic nervous system? Well, we need to remember that what we see in the eyes is inherited from 3 to 4 generations back. So let's look at her parents. This is her daddy. See all of these contraction furrows? This is her mommy. See all of these contraction furrows? So both mom and dad are genetically programmed to live in fight or flight. which means we had to work very, very focused with them to teach them more about nutrition and about supplements, about boundaries, about self-care. Now, he was a Red Seal chef, and he did work in the hospitality industry for many years. It's a hard life. He finally quit. He is now a service tech for a car dealership. She had a teaching degree. She had a bachelor's of something English with a teaching degree, and she taught school for a year or two, hated every minute of it, went and got a job in insurance, which she quite loves, but both she and he are studying to become life coaches because they both love the idea of following your heart and doing what resonates. So they are both on excellent tracks for helping their bodies to manage stress better. Is it any wonder that their darling little 2-year-old has contraction furrows? She inherited the ability to respond to stress acutely in the sympathetic mode from her parents. Hopefully, because of the work that her parents are doing, and that some of her grandparents, the grandparents on this side have also worked hard on that. Grandparents on this side, not so much. And so hopefully what this little girl is learning will mean that when she has children, she will pass on to them better genetics for how she copes. This is another little 2-year-old. She's a 3rd-generation client of mine. I took care of her grandma when her grandma was having babies. I took care of this little girl's mummy when she was having this little girl. And so when this mummy brought this little girl into me, mummy said, my little girl, her name is Violet, my little Violet has always been so sweet and so lovely and just so wonderful. And she started having meltdowns. And her meltdowns last hours. Like if she starts screaming, she won't stop for 6 or 8 hours. She will just keep going and going. And they were not able to find a way to help her get a grip, to interrupt it so that she could calm down. So I want you to remember, we've got these contraction furrows. They tell us that she's prone to functioning in that sympathetic reaction mode. Now that means that her body burns through B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. So what did I suggest to this mom? Even though this little girl is in a very loving, fully intact home, has multiple generations, grandparents close by, aunts and uncles who love her close by, everything is really good. This little girl burns through her B vitamins. So we started giving her a liquid B vitamin complex. And literally within just a couple of days, I got an email from the mom saying, oh my goodness, my daughter is back. My lovely little girl is back. And they've noticed that if they skip a day, this little girl can get a little bit rangy again, can get a little bit wild. And when they don't skip a day, when they're diligent with giving her these liquid B vitamins, she's pleasant, she's communicative, they can talk things out with her, they can reason with her, and life is good. So we need to remember that this doesn't show us that there is a deficiency in B vitamins or calcium or magnesium or vitamin C. It simply shows us that she burns through them more quickly, especially when under stress. And so it behooves us to recommend to her that she use some of these nutrients on a daily basis and that her diet is well fortified with those in its foods naturally. So lots of leafy greens and things like that to pick up some Bs, and lots of fresh produce for the vitamin C, and lots of, again, leafy greens and possibly some good whole grains and things like hemp hearts for calcium and magnesium, right? Just to protect her nutritional status. Is this fitting for you? Does this work for you? Are you understanding what I'm saying? If you're understanding it, Debbie says yes, excellent. OJ says 100% love it. Shelly says yes, amazing. This is so good, so good. Okay, this is a young man whose parents brought him to see me. I'm going to move the camera back a bit so that my Instagram friends can see both of the pictures at once. There we go. So again, young boy, he was 10 years old, and he was being assessed at school by the school psychologist for ADD and ADHD. He had problems sitting still and paying attention. Again, from a very loving, intact home, both of his parents came to every appointment, which is highly unusual, really good to see, because it meant as we talked about nutrition and talked about dietary rebalancing for this young man, we could talk about it in terms of the whole family. He has a sister as well. And we could talk about ideas that would fly for the whole family, right? We weren't going to have this little boy on a special diet and have everybody else eating other foods. I wanted the whole family on board with this. So it worked really well. So when we look at this, his eyes, we see he's got lots of contraction furrows, lots of them. So we already know B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. Are there any other nutrients that you like to recommend when you know someone has a bit of a nervous system imbalance? I love what Nicole is saying on Facebook. She says, this is gold. Yeah, it is. It is. And this is just a tiny snippet of what's in the entire course. So lots of fun. Shelley likes to recommend zinc. Love it. Love it. We practice food supplement care in our office. The body will tell us so much. This is great to have on board with NRT work. Brilliant, Danielle. So good. Excellent. Shelley likes ashwagandha. Oh, isn't ashwagandha wonderful for the way it supports the adrenals? Holy basil, Danielle, brilliant. Yes. I want to grow holy basil in my garden. I really do. Brilliant suggestions. Nicole is saying vitamin D, absolutely, to assist with the calcium, magnesium. Passion flower, yes. Brilliant suggestions. I love this. Nicely done. This is a part of what we do in the dynamic iridology course as well, is as we're looking at eyes, we talk about different approaches. What would be dietary things we could recommend? What are herbs and supplements we could recommend? Are there lifestyle things that we could recommend, so that we have a list of things to choose from, and we can choose the best modalities to recommend to the individual, right? And so it makes, when we are in the course, we really practice the application of this, not just learning the markings, but the application. Some other ones that I really like, omega-3, especially where I live. I live really far inland and we don't eat a lot of fish here. It's hard to get really good quality fish. So omega-3, lemon balm. Lemon balm is one of my faves, and chamomile. So as I look at his eyes, and we don't have time to go into all the details here, but I do see some markers that suggest that his liver genetically may want to be out of balance. And so I might want to add some liver support. Now, why would I add liver support when we're talking about the nervous system? Why do you think? Why would I want to support the liver if we're talking about the nervous system? And this is why it's so important to know your A and P, because we need to be connecting dots, not just looking at one marking and, throwing supplements at one marking. Shelley says detox pathway. That could be a part of it. Bile salts, because bile salts help us emulsify our fats, right? So that could be a part of it. Something that I think is really important, Dr. Danielle is saying endocrine hormones communicate in the liver with neurotransmitters. Absolutely, they absolutely do. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. This all weaves together. Nicole is saying detox pathways, digestion, absolutely. Let's also think about how the liver is responsible for turning carbohydrates into cholesterol. And this is going to play into what Dr. Danielle was saying, how cholesterol is key for making neurotransmitters. And if the liver's not functioning, we don't get those neurotransmitters, then how are we going to balance out those neural pathways for ADD and ADHD? Right? So might want to consider adding some liver. The detoxification pathway is so important as well, because if the body gets bogged down in garbage, if phase 1 gets stuck, or if phase 2 gets stuck in that liver detox, we can end up with the body not being able to assimilate nutrients properly. So, it's so important that we understand all of these things behind the scenes, so that we understand how to interpret this eye and what questions to ask the client to get more information to know that we're choosing the right modality. I love your interactions today, by the way. Just need to say, Nicole says it begins in the gut. It does. Well, it begins actually with the food we eat, even before we get to the gut. If you're doing the Twinkies and Coca-Cola diet, it doesn't matter what your gut's capable of, nothing's going to work, right? So yeah, but the gut is so important. We used to say that 3 complete nerve rings means that you're either going into or coming out of a nervous breakdown. That has been proven incorrect. OJ likes to use chlorophyll to flush out toxins. Isn't chlorophyll a lovely little tonic? Okay, so here's another young man, 12 years old. This is one of my grandsons, lovely boy. He's actually not 12 anymore. He's now 17, and he's taller than I am by a long shot. And he has that really deep voice that my boys are famous for. He's healthy. He's always been healthy, active, very smart in his class. He's an excellent athlete. Like, he and his brother work hard in school. They work hard at sports. They're always taking the top awards for the best grades, all-around athlete, the highest grades of an athlete. I mean, everything, right? They really clean up on awards, which I think is lovely, because it's a positive stroke for all the hard work they do. His mom, my daughter-in-law, is extremely conscientious with diet. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but I will say that everything they eat is home cooked from scratch, and very low sugar, very low carb-ish, as in, I mean, birthdays are high sugar times and holidays are high sugar times, but the rest of the time, very limited. And the boys are very in control of that. There's different sweet things, like a big jar of granola bars and things like that in the kitchen. The boys can help themselves to them whenever they want, and they rarely eat them, if ever, right? So we see here, we've got loads of contraction furrows again. This young man, again, because of his nutritional status, because his diet is loaded with good protein, good fats and oils, excellent vegetable and fruit content, just really an excellent diet, adequate calories for his activity level. He's a pretty laid back kid, in spite of the super high standards that he has for himself educationally. He also works part-time in both of the family businesses. Both his mom and his dad have their own businesses. It's an intact family. And the kids work for both mom and dad, depending on who needs them, right? This is the younger brother, 2 years younger. Notice all the contraction furrows. Again, well-nourished. This young man chose to be vegetarian. And his mother said, well, you're not doing that by just cutting out meat. We're going to learn how to do this well. So mom and this son are vegetarian. They have cut out all meat. There are always a lot of alternate protein options at every meal, so that they are getting all of the protein they require, doing a brilliant job. The first boy we looked at just a moment ago, or the boy we looked at previous to this, and his dad, who's my son, are omnivores. They'll eat anything, literally anything, right? And so we've got that split in the family, but the omnivores will eat the vegetarian stuff. That's not a problem. And when and there's always, but for those who eat the meat, there's almost always a meat option as well. So we see here that we've got lots of contraction furrows, but because of the nutritional status, because these children are well fed, well nourished, they're really laid back. Mom and dad are also very clear about downtime. Like, it's summertime. The boys are both in summer school getting tutoring to get a jump start on next year, which is amazing. They'll be going into grade 11 and grade 12, which of course, critical years for grades for university entrance. But they've also planned several 4 or 5 day camping trips just to get away and just stop moving. Just stop, right? During the school year, they do the same thing. It'll be midterms, and then after midterms, mom and dad will say, that's it, nothing's happening for the next 3 days. We're just going to lounge around the house and relax and watch movies and play games together. And that balance is exactly what these boys need. They can push hard. These are also an indication that these people like to push hard. They like to be busy. They are very goal oriented. This is true of everyone who has contraction furrows, but they tend to push until they burn out. So these boys' parents are aware of that these boys could push themselves to burnout. And the parents don't let that happen, because every now and then they pull the boys back and say, okay, it's chill time. We're just stopping. We're taking some time off. Mom's not going to work. Dad's not going to work. Boys are not going to do homework. Exams are done. We're taking a few days off. It's a long weekend. We're going to really take a long weekend. Anyone who gets dressed in real clothes for all the weekend is going to pay a fine, kind of thing. We're all going to lounge around in pajamas and do nothing but play with the dogs and cats, right? So important. This is a female client of mine. She's in her 50s. Now, she has lots of stress on and off and on again, lots of family politics garbage in her life. It's just very, very sad. And we see she's got lots of contraction furrows. There's a lot of things going on in this eye that add weight to the contraction furrows. One of her biggest stressors is that her doctors can't decide whether she's got MS or not. Right? This week they're saying you've got MS. Next week they're saying, oh, no, you don't. There's not enough lesions, or there's, whatever. And so what we see with that is that in and of itself is a major stress for her. We don't have a marking in the eyes that says she will have MS, but we do know when we see these rings that she internalizes her stress deeply. That is going to significantly impact the rate at which she burns B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. She is going to need her downtime. And Nicole is asking a great question. Is there a difference if the furrows, circumference lines, some are continuous, some are skipping? Different shapes and different endpoints of contraction furrows, different patterns in the contraction furrows do give us deeper information. And in the scope of the course, we learn, I want to say 7 different subcategories of contraction furrows to understand the full impact of what they can mean. Is that helpful, Nicole? Because yes, there is a difference. This is a 24-year-old male. You are most welcome, Nicole. 24-year-old male, high anxiety. History of depression with medication, history of anxiety with medication, poor diet, very high in refined carbs, very sedentary, no physical activity. Now, again, his eyes don't tell us the stress he's under. He's from a very dysfunctional family. His parents and his siblings are bullies in terrible, terrible ways that have done all kinds of damage to this young man. These rings again tell us that he burns through B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium at record speed. Our biggest challenge with him is his diet is so poor that he doesn't even get a tiny bit of B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, or magnesium. So he has nothing to cope with. Our goal with him is to very gradually improve his diet. So his diet used to include 2 liters or 2 quarts of soda pop every day. And his brilliant wife just finally said, we should cut this out. It's probably not good for us. They both cut it out and they both lost about 10 pounds within the first 2 weeks, right? And so now she is working with doing very subtle dietary changes She doesn't nag him about what he's doing on his own time, because we all know that nagging doesn't work, right? But at home, when she prepares a meal, there's vegetables, there's protein, and she's building up to the point where she's gradually phasing out things like white rice. He's Asian, she's not. So she's working at reducing the white rice and reducing some of the high carb sweets that he was raised on. Now, as she does that, we're not going to see these change, but we're going to see that his health improves. And truly, isn't that the most important thing to see? Isn't that what we really want to see? Isn't that the proof? The eyes changing color prove nothing, really, and they don't change anyways when we do these things. And I've proven that over 4 decades. But seeing health improve, that's what we want, correct? So contraction furrows, again, help us understand our clients' needs at a deeper level. They help us to understand more the interactions between different organs. They teach us what questions to ask when we see these. We want to ask, when you're under stress, what kinds of problems, what kinds of symptoms do you have? How does it feel in your body? What does it do to you mentally and emotionally? Tell me about your diet. And we're going to hear, when we hear like this young man, very high carb diet, well, that's going to be a part of the problem. And it offers us the opportunity to begin teaching them about improved nutrition. And we would never, ever, except in very rare cases, do a complete 180 diet revamp, right? It's too hard. Instead, what I like to do with people that are like this is I like to get them to do substitutions. So instead of the 2 quarts of pop he drinks every day, work with, can we get that down to 1 quart and have you substitute water that has maybe some strawberries floating in it for flavor, right? And gradually get him switching over so that he's never feeling like he's just been ambushed. Because when someone feels ambushed, they always push back and they don't stick with it. So if you want to dive into contraction furrows and things like that even more deeply, was that fun today or was that fun? I invite you to chat with me about the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course. Now, I'm going to give you a tiny bit of information here, not a lot, because this isn't meant to be a commercial. The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for health professionals is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, naturopaths. We went through the list of everyone that qualifies. It's probably more than that at the beginning of this session. For people who are health professionals who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. Some of you maybe have this problem that you work with clients and you see the client and you gather information and then you go off on your own time to create the program for them. Do you do that? And this is a really safe place to admit it. If you do that, I'd like you to put guilty in the comments, guilty as charged. I tell you, I did that for a lot of years. Do you give your own time away creating client programs? If you do, I want you to put guilty in the comments. And if you're embarrassed, you can send it to me privately. Okay, because most of us have done that and many of us are still doing it. And what it means is your working hours you're not getting paid for. And if it takes you 2 or 3 hours to create a program, you are giving your clients too much information. You're overwhelming them. And it makes it difficult for them to do what you want them to or what you're recommending. Debbie, thank you for being vulnerable and honest that you are guilty of this. If you want to stop doing that, if you want to be able to get your programs created in your own client, in your paid client time, and create programs that are doable, not comprehensive programs, but programs that will take your client up 1 notch, and then see them again to create a program that takes them up another notch. Build it gradually so they can actually do it. And if you want to be really confident as an iridologist, not just be able to name markings, but understand, like we did today, how organs are related and how they interact with each other and what that means in an iris assessment and program creation. If you want to be able to do that and have long-term retention, we saw the eyes of third-generation clients today, then I invite you to schedule a Zoom call with me. And this is not a sales call. I don't want anyone thinking that they're coming to this to get talked into anything. A sales call, and you would use this URL, tinyurl.com/iridology-insight. This is actually just a 15-minute call for us to decide to talk together and for you to decide whether the iridology program I offer is the right fit for you. And if it is, then we'll set up another little call after that to get your information to get you enrolled. Unless you're really, really gung-ho, and then I'll grab your information on the first call. But I don't offer you the opportunity to get enrolled on a first call if I don't think it's a good fit. Does that sound like a safe way to investigate a class? To actually speak with the teacher and find out if it could be a good fit? If that sounds like it's safe, give me safe in the comments. Again, it's only a 15-minute call. There's not enough time in there for me to strong arm anybody, and I wouldn't know how to strong arm anyone anyways. Debbie says it sounds safe. Brilliant, brilliant. So again, I'm just inviting you. I'm going to pay, and Shelley says safe as well. Love it. I am going to post this URL down here. And if you've already had a call with me maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and you're thinking, I'm ready now, then go ahead and schedule a call. There's going to be some questions that you answer when you schedule it to help me know how to be prepared for our call together. And if you are ready to enroll, just put that in the comments of those questions that you're ready to enroll. And then we can take the conversation a slightly different way because you've asked for it to go that way. The next course is starting on August 11th. And we can go over all the details of what's involved in the course, what you receive in the course, all the support you get in the course when we talk. All righty. Any final questions from anybody? Nicole is saying safe and great. Love it, Nicole. Thank you for saying that. Any other questions you would like answers to at this precise moment? I have to leave, but can I watch this again? Debbie, you registered for the webinar. You will receive the replay link within 48 hours. So you will be able to rewatch it. Watch for the email coming from judith@cobblestonehealth.com. Fabulous. Can we get a reading on our own eyes? Shelley, that's a really great question. Yes, you can. The trick is, can you get good enough digital photos to send to me? And then we can schedule an appointment to do a health assessment using your eyes. The trick is always getting good enough photos. So if you are interested in that, I can certainly send you links to some YouTube videos I've created that teach you what we're looking for in iris photos and how to potentially get good enough photos for us to work with. All right. With that, my friends, I think we are done for today. Thank you for being with me. I really appreciate all of the interaction. That makes it more fun, and truly you get a whole lot more out of me when you play in my sandbox with me like that. I hope you have an amazing day. Watch for the replay. For those of you who were on the webinar, watch for the replay link within the next 48 hours. And I will talk to you soon. Look forward to having some phone calls with you too. Bye for now.